So, what are we doing here?
We're talking about primes.
Then why are the zooms out?
No, we'll talk about those too.
And why are you dressed like that?
Like what?
Like all in black. And what are you drinking?
Tea.
Since when do you drink tea?
Earl Grey, it's sophisticated.
Okay. Can we just, get this over with?
Sure, I'll start. Primes are better than zooms.
What? How?
Well, they're faster, lighter, sharper.
They're not always sharper.
Oh, and they cost less.
That's not true.
And I mean better price, not cheap,
Okay, fine. Zooms are more versatile and they keep you prepared, ready to capture a picture perfect moment at any
Who
moment.
cares if it's picture perfect if it's not the perfect picture?
What?
I already said it. Primes are sharper.
That's not true.
Also less distortion if you get good ones.
I can't talk to you.
Wait, we're not done.
Oh yeah, we're done. We are so done.
That's so unprofessional. James?
If you're new here, welcome. I'm James Lavish and I do photography tutorials, insights, and reviews. So if that sounds interesting to you, hit the subscribe button. It'd be super appreciated. There's been some pretty hot debate recently about lenses, and most of that has been centered around zooms versus primes. And if you're new to photography, this can get pretty confusing quickly. So we're gonna talk about the differences and the advantages and disadvantages of each. And by the end of this video, you should have a pretty good idea of which route you should take and how you should start building your own collection. First of all, my philosophy is that lenses are just a tool for your creativity. If you're getting the basics wrong, like exposure or composition or posing, then a great lens is not going to make a great image for you. But once you start getting those things right consistently and you move to being an intermediate photographer, you're going to start noticing differences in lenses like sharpness and color rendition, and they're going to become more and more important to you. And you're going to start thinking about ways to build out your kit for each type of photography that you do. But for beginners, let's just talk about the basics first. Prime lenses are lenses that come in a fixed focal length. If you want to change your point of view, you literally have to move with your feet. And zoom lenses, they have variable focal lengths. Common ones are 16 to 35 millimeter, 24 to 70 millimeter, or the 70 to 200 millimeters. So you can stand in one spot and capture things from a multitude of distances from you. Because primes have less glass and fewer elements inside, they're usually cheaper. Not always, but for the same quality, you're going to find that prime lenses are usually cheaper than zooms. Also, they're obviously smaller and lighter, which makes them good for staying inconspicuous, especially for things like street photography. And if you're a studio photographer and you have people coming into your studio that aren't used to having their photo taken, well, if they show up and you've got this thing out, it can be pretty intimidating. But if you use an 85 millimeter prime that's about this size, well, that could be a lot easier for someone to get comfortable in front of. And finally, primes are usually good for filmmakers because of their size and weight. They're easier to balance on a gimbal. And without that zoom moving in and out, they don't become unbalanced when you're changing focal lengths. And then you've got the speed and bokeh effect, where prime lenses are usually faster, sometimes as much as 2 or 3 stops. And this is not just useful in low light situations, but also when you want to blur out noise or distractions in your background. These are great for that bokeh. And once again, because of fewer elements, prime lenses are usually sharper across the whole aperture range. Again, this is not always true, especially with some of the zoom lenses that are coming out. They're super sharp from edge to edge on almost every single focal range and most of the apertures. And zooms have advantages that we should talk about too. But first, tell me, what do you favor, zooms or primes? Leave it in the comments below and let me know what you're shooting with. And if you're wondering about Sony zooms, I just did a video called The Holy Trinity, and it covers Sony's 3 main G Master zoom lenses: the 16 to 35 G Master, the 24 to 70 G Master, and the 70 to 200 G Master. I'll leave it in the links below and you can check that out. Okay, now for zooms. First of all, they're great for versatility. So if you're a wedding or event photographer, you don't want to spend time fumbling around your bag finding the right prime, and you'd rather just have a zoom where you can grab that moment before it's gone. Also, most zooms have what's known as OSS, or optical steady shot, and this helps eliminate unsteadiness in your shot. It's especially helpful if you don't have a camera which has IBS, or in-body stabilization, like the older Sony APS-C series, the 6400 and earlier versions that didn't have this. And then of course there's portability, and this can go either way depending on which primes or which zooms you end up buying. And once you get used to focal lengths and become more comfortable powerful with them, primes can actually become more convenient. 2 or 3 of them could end up being smaller and lighter than 2 zooms. And if they cover the focal length that you need, well, then it becomes more convenient just to grab the 2 primes than to lug around those zooms. As far as recommendations concerned, I would say that if you're an event photographer or wedding photographer, you're gonna probably need some zooms in your bag just to cover yourself, so like I said, you're not fumbling around looking for the right focal length and you miss the important moments. But you're probably also gonna wanna have a macro and/or portrait lens in your bag, and those will probably be primes. Landscape photographers probably want a mix of primes and zooms in the bag. If you're doing astrophotography, you're gonna want something that's super wide and super fast in order to get that light in the sensor before the stars move. And a 16 and 35 millimeter zoom is pretty hard to beat for landscapes. And if you're a street photographer, well, primes are pretty hard to beat when you're trying to stay still. I would say if you have a 24 millimeter or maybe a 35 millimeter and 85 millimeter in your bag, that would probably cover you for the whole day. And if you're a wildlife or sports photographer, well, you're gonna have to get some zooms, there's no doubt about it. But regardless of what type of photography you do, there's a ton of lenses out there, both primes and zooms. So what I would encourage you to do is rent some lenses over a weekend or a few week period and see what you really like. That could save you a lot of money in the long run from fumbling around and buying a bunch of lenses that you just didn't need or don't realize that you wouldn't use for a long period of time. But in any case, let me know what you end up doing and leave it in the comments below. I really want to know what type of photography you're doing and what lenses you're using to do it with. I hope this video helps in your early journey in photography, and if you think it did, please hit that like button below. It really does help. And if you haven't subscribed already, it'd be super appreciated. And I'll see you in the next video.